A poor girl hands a note to a young billionaire in a restaurant that says, "I need a new father. My father left with his mistress, and my mother cries every day." What he does next surprises the girl's mother and changes their lives forever. Silence weighed on the room like a suffocating blanket. Mike moved like a ghost, his fingers sliding over the drawers of the dresser he had shared with Sarah for years. Every piece of folded clothing placed into the suitcase was a silent blow to the life they had built together. The muffled sound of the zipper closing echoed like a dark omen of what was to come. Feeling an inexplicable restlessness, Sarah climbed the stairs. Her hesitant steps in the hallway seemed to count the seconds until the inevitable. Turning the corner, her heart stopped. Mike was there, suitcase in hand, his face a mask of determination and guilt. "Mike!" Sarah's voice came out shaky, a question loaded with fear and disbelief. Their gazes met, and in that moment, Sarah's world collapsed. Words weren't necessary. The suitcase, Mike's posture, everything screamed the truth she refused to accept. "I'm sorry, Sarah." Mike's voice was low, almost a whisper, but each word cut like a sharp blade. "I can't do this anymore." The initial shock gave way to an explosion of emotions. "Do what, Mike? Be a husband? A father?" Sarah's words came out in fragments, mixed with sobs she fought to hold back. Mike looked away, unable to face the pain in his wife's eyes. I met someone." The world seemed to stop. The air grew thick and hard to breathe. Sarah staggered, leaning against the wall so she wouldn't fall. "Someone? You're leaving me? Leaving us for someone else?" Mike's confession opened the floodgates of a torrent of emotions. Harsh words were exchanged, years of love and trust crumbling in a matter of minutes. Sarah shouted, cried, begged, while Mike remained silent, his face a mask of remorse and resolve. Amid this turmoil, a small sound caught both their attention. Lily, only 4 years old, stood in the bedroom doorway, her wide eyes filled with confusion and fear. "Mommy! Daddy!" Her little voice trembled. Sarah swallowed a sob, trying to pull herself together for her daughter. Mike, for a moment, seemed to waver in his decision, but his face soon hardened again. "I'm sorry, honey," he said, briefly kneeling to hug Lily. "Daddy has to go now." With one last look at Sarah, Mike grabbed his suitcase and headed down the stairs. The sound of the front door closing echoed through the house like the last nail in a coffin, sealing the end of an era. Sarah collapsed onto the floor, her sobs echoing through the empty house. Lily, not fully understanding what had happened, timidly approached her mother, placing a small hand on her shoulder. The days that followed were a blur of pain and confusion. Sarah barely left her bed, consumed by a deep depression that seemed to drain all color and life from the world around her. The curtains remained closed, plunging the house into a perpetual twilight that reflected the occupant's state of mind. Lily, with a maturity beyond her years, tried to care for her mother as best she could. She brought cups of water and attempted to make simple sandwiches, often leaving more crumbs than food on the plate. Her small hands stroked Sarah's tangled hair, her childish voice murmuring comforting words she had heard from adults. "It'll be okay, Mommy," Lily repeated, without truly understanding the weight of her own words. The familiar routine, once so well structured, completely fell apart. Meals were forgotten. The house fell into neglect. Lily's toys lay scattered on the floor, with no one having the energy to pick them up. The phone rang incessantly, but Sarah couldn't muster the strength to answer, letting the voicemail fill with worried messages from friends and family. At night, when the silence became deafening, Sarah could hear Lily's muffled sobs from the next room. The sound broke her already shattered heart, but she felt paralyzed, unable to offer the comfort her daughter so desperately needed. It was on one of those nights, with moonlight filtering through the gaps in the curtains, casting ghostly shadows across the bedroom, that something inside Sarah finally snapped. Lily's crying, once again echoing through the silent house, acted like an alarm clock for her dormant conscience. With superhuman effort, Sarah forced herself to sit up in bed. Her body ached, protesting the movement after days of inactivity. She looked at her trembling hands, noticing for the first time how much weight she had lost. A mirror on the wall reflected an image she barely recognized: sunken eyes, disheveled hair, a shadow of the woman she used to be. But amid the chaos of her appearance, Sarah saw something else in the reflection. Lily's eyes, large and full of innocence, seemed to look back at her. It was as if, in that moment, she could clearly see the impact her depression was having on her daughter. "Lily," she whispered, her voice hoarse from disuse. With unsteady steps, Sarah got out of bed. Every movement was an effort, but she kept going. She crossed the hallway, guided by her daughter's muffled sobs, opening Lily's bedroom door, her heart clenched. The little girl was curled up on the bed, clinging tightly to her favorite teddy bear. Upon seeing her mother, Lily's eyes widened, a mix of surprise and hope shining through her tears. "Mommy?" Lily's small voice was a blend of relief and uncertainty. Sarah felt tears rolling down her cheeks as she approached the bed. She sat next to Lily, pulling the girl into a tight hug. "I'm here, my love," Sarah whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Mommy's here now." As she held her daughter, Sarah felt something shift inside her. The pain was still there, deep and throbbing, but now there was something else. Determination. She knew she couldn't go on like this. For Lily, she needed to be strong. "We're going to be okay," Sarah said, both to Lily and to herself. "I promise." As the first light of dawn began to filter through the window, mother and daughter remained wrapped in each other's arms, taking the first step on a long journey of healing and rebirth. Sarah knew the road ahead would be difficult, but looking at Lily's sleeping face, she found the strength she needed to face the new day. Sarah was hugging Lily, looking out the window at the sunrise. Her eyes, though tired, had a renewed glow of determination. She knew that for Lily's sake and for her own, she would need to find the strength to rebuild their lives. The future was uncertain, but at that moment, Sarah made a silent promise that, no matter what happened, she would be the rock her daughter needed. The shrill sound of the alarm tore through the morning silence, yanking Sarah out of a restless sleep. For a brief moment, she allowed herself to remain still, eyes closed, pretending the world beyond her bed didn't exist. But reality soon imposed itself, bringing with it the weight of responsibilities. With a deep sigh, Sarah forced herself to get up. Each movement seemed to require a Herculean effort, her body still heavy with the emotional burden of the last few weeks. She looked at the restaurant uniform hanging on the closet door, a sight that used to be routine, but now felt strangely foreign. As she got ready mechanically, Sarah found herself facing a dilemma she never imagined she'd face. What to do with Lily? Mike had always watched her during Sarah's shifts at the restaurant. Now, with him out of the picture and their finances in tatters, hiring a babysitter seemed like an unattainable luxury. After several frustrating calls to neighbors and acquaintances, Sarah found herself out of options. With a heavy heart, she decided she would have to take Lily to work. It wasn't ideal, but it was the only viable solution at the moment. "Lily, honey, you'll have to come with Mommy today, okay?" Sarah explained gently, helping her daughter get dressed. Lily nodded, her large eyes full of an understanding beyond her years. "Can I bring my crayons?" Sarah felt a lump in her throat. "Of course, my love. Bring whatever you need to keep yourself busy." The walk to the restaurant was tense. Sarah could feel the curious gazes of passers-by, as if her pain and shame were written all over her face. Arriving, she hesitated for a moment before opening the door, taking a deep breath to gather courage. The bell above the entrance chimed, announcing their arrival. Suddenly, the lively buzz of the restaurant ceased, replaced by an uncomfortable silence. Sarah could feel all eyes on her, a mixture of pity, curiosity, and poorly disguised gossip. "Sarah, it's good to see you back." Her boss's forced, cheerful voice broke the silence. He cast a quick glance at Lily, but made no comments. Sarah mustered a smile, guiding Lily to a quiet corner of the restaurant. "Stay here, okay? Mommy will be right over there if you need anything." As she moved among the tables, Sarah could hear her co-workers whispering. Words like, "poor thing," "abandoned," and "how could he," reached her ears, each like a small dagger. The shift seemed to drag on. Sarah struggled to maintain her composure, forcing smiles for the customers while her mind wandered. Flashbacks of happy moments with Mike ambushed her at the most unexpected moments. The day he proposed to her in this same restaurant, the nights he surprised her by showing up at the end of her shift with flowers, each joyful memory now tainted with the bitterness of betrayal. In a particularly difficult moment, Sarah found herself standing in the middle of the dining area, tray trembling in her hands, tears threatening to fall. That's when she felt a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Hey, take a deep breath. You're doing fine." It was Jessica, her best friend and co-worker. Her eyes conveyed understanding and support. Sarah nodded gratefully, momentarily regaining her composure. Jessica had always been her pillar of support, and her presence now was a balm to her wounded soul. During her break, Sarah checked on Lily, who was absorbed in her drawings. The scene brought a genuine smile to her lips, the first in weeks. But the brief peace was interrupted when Jessica approached, an envelope in hand. "Sarah, this arrived for you." Jessica's worried expression said it all. With trembling fingers, Sarah opened the envelope. It was an overdue bill, the first of many reminders of the new financial reality she faced. Panic threatened to engulf her again, but she pushed it down, aware of Lily's watchful eyes. The end of her shift came as a blessing. Physically and emotionally exhausted, Sarah gathered her things and went to get Lily. To her surprise, the girl seemed cheerful. "Mommy, can I come back tomorrow?" "Back? I liked drawing here," Lily asked, her eyes shining with an innocence that made Sarah's heart ache. Sarah hesitated, torn between practical needs and her desire to protect her daughter. But Lily's hopeful smile was hard to resist. "We'll see, honey. We'll see," Sarah replied softly, taking Lily's hand and heading for the exit. As they walked home under the evening sky, Sarah reflected on the day. It had been hard, painful even, but she had survived, and maybe, she thought, glancing at Lily skipping by her side, things could get better in time. It was a fragile thought, but it was a start. The following morning brought a sense of déjà vu for Sarah. The alarm sounded as relentless as ever, and once again she found herself fighting the urge to remain in bed. The prospect of facing another day at the restaurant with Lily in tow weighed heavily on her heart. Still, the bills wouldn't pay themselves, and she knew she had no choice. "Lily, honey, wake up," Sarah called gently, entering her daughter's room. "We have to go to the restaurant again today." To her surprise, Lily brightened at the news. "Can I bring my new drawings, Mommy?" Sarah nodded, a sad smile tugging at her lips. "Of course you can, my love." The walk to the restaurant was less tense than the day before, but Sarah still felt the weight of onlookers' stares. Upon arriving, she took a deep breath before opening the door, mentally preparing for another day of challenges. Taste of Life, the restaurant where Sarah worked, was a modest yet cozy establishment. Located on a busy corner, it had seen better days, but still retained a peculiar charm that attracted a loyal clientele. The walls, painted in a soft shade of yellow, were adorned with paintings of local landscapes and black and white photographs of the city from decades past. Dark wooden tables, slightly worn from use, were arranged to maximize space, each with a small candle in the center, creating an intimate atmosphere even during the day. The counter, a sturdy piece of oak that had stood the test of time, proudly displayed a variety of homemade cakes and pies under glass domes. Behind it, an old coffee machine hummed constantly, filling the air with the comforting aroma of fresh coffee. In the far corner, next to a window overlooking the busy street, there was a small stage. On weekends, local musicians performed there, adding a touch of life and culture to the environment. Sarah led Lily to the same quiet corner as the day before, setting up a small space for her with paper and crayons. With a quick kiss on her daughter's forehead, Sarah tied her apron and prepared to start her shift. The hours passed in a blur of orders, trays and forced smiles. Sarah moved mechanically, her mind split between her tasks and her constant worries about Lily and their uncertain future. It was in the mid-afternoon, during a lull in the restaurant, that the door opened and a new customer walked in. Sarah, busy cleaning a table, didn't notice the newcomer right away. David Thornton, at 32, was someone who naturally drew attention. Tall and well-groomed, he moved with a quiet confidence that spoke of years of success and privilege. His dark suit, obviously tailored, contrasted with the restaurant's simplicity, yet he showed no sign of discomfort or arrogance. His deep blue eyes scanned the room with genuine curiosity before settling on an empty table by the window. With determined steps, he headed there, sitting with the grace of someone accustomed to far more sophisticated venues. Lily, from her corner, watched David enter with fascination. There was something about him that immediately caught her childish attention. Perhaps it was the way he carried himself, so different from the usual customers. Or maybe it was just the novelty of an unfamiliar face in a place she was beginning to know well. Finally noticing the new customer, Sarah approached to serve him. "Good afternoon, sir. Welcome to Taste of Life. May I bring you a menu?" David looked up, a gentle smile lighting up his face. "Good afternoon, yes please, and some water if possible." There was something in David's voice, a mix of authority and kindness, that made Sarah hesitate for a moment before nodding and walking away to fulfill his request. While Sarah was busy with other customers, Lily continued to watch David from a distance. She saw him flip through the menu, place his order, and then take a laptop from his briefcase, starting to work while waiting for his meal. Lily's curiosity grew by the minute. There was something about that man that intrigued her, something that vaguely reminded her of her father, but in a way she couldn't quite understand. Gathering all the courage her 4 years could summon, Lily decided she wanted to talk to him. With a quick glance at her mother, who was busy on the other side of the restaurant, Lily quietly left her corner and began to approach David's table. Sarah, completely absorbed in her tasks and worries, didn't notice her daughter's movement. Only when returning from a table with an order did she see, with a jolt of panic, Lily standing beside the well-dressed man's table. "Hi," Lily said timidly, her big eyes fixed on David. Startled by the little girl's sudden appearance, David moved away from his laptop. "Hello," he replied, a kind smile forming on his lips. "What's your name?" "Lily," she answered, gaining confidence with David's friendly reaction. "You look sad. Are you alone?" The innocent question caught David by surprise. For a moment, a shadow seemed to pass through his eyes, but it was quickly replaced by a look of tenderness. "Good observation, Lily. Sometimes people can look sad even when they're not. But yes, I'm having lunch alone today." Lily nodded, as though the answer confirmed something for her. Then, with the impulsiveness characteristic of a 4-year-old, she pulled a folded piece of paper from her dress pocket. "I made this for you," she said, holding the paper out to David. At that moment, Sarah finally reached the table, panic evident on her face. "Lily, what are you doing?" "I'm so sorry, sir. She shouldn't be bothering the customers." But it was too late. David had already taken the paper from Lily's hands and was beginning to unfold it. "No trouble at all," David assured her, smiling at Sarah before focusing back on Lily's improvised note. The world seemed to slow down as David read the words scrawled in Lily's childish handwriting. "I need a new father. My daddy left with his lover, and my mom cries every day." The impact of those words was visible on David's face. His eyes widened, a mix of shock, sadness, and something deeper, a personal pain that seemed to echo Lily's words. Sarah, seeing David's reaction, felt her face burn with shame and mortification. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry, Lily. That's not something you do. Let's go back to your little spot." But David raised a hand, gently stopping Sarah from taking Lily away. Please, wait a moment, he said, his voice gentle but firm. Looking directly at Lily, David spoke with a kindness that surprised even himself. Thank you for sharing that with me, Lily. You're a very brave and kind girl. Then, turning to Sarah, who looked on the verge of collapsing from embarrassment, David continued, Please don't be upset. Children have a unique way of expressing how they feel. I understand more than you might think. In that moment, memories long suppressed flooded David's mind. He saw himself again as an 8-year-old boy, sitting on the staircase of his luxurious home, listening to his parents shouting downstairs. His mother's voice, broken by tears, accusing his father of infidelity. The sound of the door slamming as his father left, never to return. The weeks and months that followed were a blur of sadness and confusion. His mother, once vibrant and loving, became a shadow of herself, lost in her own pain. Young David, like Lily now, desperately tried to understand and fix a world that seemed to have collapsed around him. Returning to the present, David looked at Sarah and Lily with new understanding. I'd like to talk to you both, if that's possible. Maybe after your shift. Sarah, still mortified but intrigued by David's unexpectedly sympathetic reaction, hesitated before answering. I don't know if that would be appropriate. We don't even know each other, and please, David interrupted gently. I promise my intentions are purely to help. Sometimes fate works in mysterious ways, and I feel this meeting was no accident. Lily, watching the adults interact with her keen eyes, suddenly spoke up. Please, Mommy. He seems nice. Sarah looked at her daughter, then at David, and finally at the note still in his hands. With a resigned sigh, she nodded. All right, my shift ends at 8. If you're still here, I will be, David assured her with a kind smile. As Sarah walked away, guiding Lily back to her corner, she felt a mix of emotions, shame at the situation, worry about this stranger's intentions, but also a small spark of hope she couldn't explain. The rest of the shift passed in a blur for Sarah. She moved mechanically between tables, serving customers and clearing plates, but her mind was elsewhere. Occasionally, her eyes drifted to David's table, where he remained, alternating between working on his laptop and gazing pensively out the window. David, for his part, found it difficult to concentrate on his work. Lily's note had awakened memories and emotions he had long tried to suppress. As he watched Sarah move through the restaurant, he noticed the tension in her shoulders, the exhaustion in her eyes, and felt an inexplicable connection to her struggle. At exactly 8 o'clock, the last customer besides David left the restaurant. After a brief exchange with her co-workers, Sarah approached David's table nervously. Lily, clinging tightly to her mother's hand, looked more excited than apprehensive. Thank you for agreeing to talk, David began, indicating the chairs in front of him. Please, have a seat. Sarah hesitated for a moment before sitting down, pulling Lily onto her lap. I'm really sorry about Lily's behavior earlier. She shouldn't have... David raised a hand, gently interrupting. Please, don't apologize. Actually, I'd like to thank Lily for her honesty. Adults aren't always so direct about their feelings. He paused, his eyes growing distant for a moment. I understand what you're going through more than you can imagine. Sarah looked at him curiously, the tension in her shoulders easing slightly. What do you mean? David took a deep breath, as though preparing to share something deeply personal. When I was 8, my father left us. He had a mistress, and just like Lily's father. Sarah was surprised by the revelation. The successful, confident man before her seemed so far removed from the image of an abandoned child. I'm sorry. That must have been hard. David nodded. It was, and that's why Lily's note affected me so much. I saw myself in her, and I saw my mother in you, Sarah. The pain, the confusion, the struggle to move on, I lived through all of it. Lily, who had been listening intently, suddenly spoke up. Were you sad too? A sad smile appeared on David's lips. Yes, Lily, I was very sad. But you know what? Over time, things got better. And that's why I'm here talking with you now. Because I know that with the right help, you can overcome this too. Sarah, feeling tears welling in her eyes, struggled to keep her composure. It's kind of you to care, but we're strangers. You don't owe us anything. Maybe not, David agreed, but sometimes life puts us in the right place to make a difference. Sarah, I'd like to help you if you'll let me. Sarah felt a surge of pride and distrust rise in her throat. Help? How? And why? You don't even know us. David leaned forward, sincerity in his eyes. I know it may seem strange, but I feel that this meeting wasn't by chance. You see, I own a technology company. We're always looking for dedicated, hard-working people. I'd like to offer you a job as my personal assistant. Sarah's eyes widened in shock. A job? But you know nothing about my skills or experience? David smiled. I've seen how you work here. Your dedication, your attention to detail. Those are qualities I value highly. Besides, I can provide training for any specific skills you might need. Sarah felt a mixture of gratitude, skepticism, hope, and fear. She looked at Lily, who watched the conversation with wide, hopeful eyes. I don't know what to say, Sarah stammered. It's a very generous offer, but... Mommy, please, Lily interrupted, her voice filled with emotion. The nice man wants to help. Can we accept? David smiled gently at Lily before turning his attention back to Sarah. I understand your hesitation. It's a big, sudden decision. I'm not asking for an immediate answer. I just want you to consider my offer. Sarah took a deep breath, trying to organize her thoughts. It's a lot to process. I truly appreciate your kindness, but I need time to think about it. Of course, David nodded understandingly. Take all the time you need. May I leave my card with you? That way, you can reach out when you feel ready to talk more about it. Sarah accepted the card with trembling hands. Thank you. I'll think about it. David stood, preparing to leave. No rush. And Sarah, regardless of your decision, I want you to know that you and Lily are very strong. You'll get through this. As David walked away, Sarah remained seated, the card in her hands, a swirl of emotions in her chest. Lily hugged her tightly, whispering, He's going to help us, Mommy. I know he will. Sarah kissed the top of Lily's head, her own doubts and hopes mingling. She looked at the card once more, David Thornton's name gleaming under the restaurant's soft light. Let's go home, sweetie, Sarah said softly. We have a lot to think about. As they left the restaurant, Sarah couldn't help but feel that somehow her life was about to change drastically. The future, which only hours before seemed so dark, now shone with a faint light of hope. With Lily by her side and David's unexpected offer echoing in her mind, Sarah took the first steps toward a new chapter in her life, uncertain, but filled with possibilities. Walking back home, Sarah felt the weight of David's card in her pocket, as if it were much more than a simple piece of paper. The night air was cool, and city lights glimmered around them, creating a scene that felt almost surreal after the day's unexpected events. Lily, still excited by the prospect of change, skipped along beside Sarah, occasionally tugging her hand and asking questions. Mommy, what's a personal assistant? Is it fun? Can I go to work with you if you say yes? Sarah answered mechanically, her mind a whirlwind of conflicting thoughts and emotions. On one hand, David's offer seemed like a lifeline thrown into a stormy sea. On the other, years of struggle and distrust made her question whether anything so good could truly happen without a hidden price. Once home, Sarah prepared a quick snack for Lily and put her to bed. Sitting on the edge of her daughter's bed, she watched Lily's serene, sleeping face, overwhelmed by a mixture of love and paralyzing fear for the future. Later, alone in the kitchen, Sarah finally allowed the tears she'd held back all day to fall. She cried silently, letting out all the confusion, hope, and dread she felt. When her tears finally dried, She felt strangely light, as though a weight had been temporarily lifted from her shoulders. With trembling hands, Sarah took David's card and examined it more closely. The paper was thick and textured, the kind of card that screamed luxury and success. The name of David's company, Thornton Innovations, was printed in elegant lettering below his name. On impulse, Sarah turned on her old laptop and searched for David and his company. The results left her speechless. David Thornton wasn't just successful. He was a titan of the tech industry, known for groundbreaking innovations and philanthropic approaches to business. Praiseful articles described how he had built his empire from scratch, overcoming a difficult childhood to become one of the youngest and most successful entrepreneurs in the country. Sarah read with fascination about David's charitable programs, many of which focused on helping single-parent families and children in vulnerable situations. As the night wore on, Sarah found herself oscillating between cautious hope and protective skepticism. Part of her wanted to believe this chance encounter could be the miracle she and Lily needed. Another part, hardened by years of disappointments, warned her to be careful. Before going to bed, Sarah took out a piece of paper and started making a list of pros and cons. On the pro side, financial security, career opportunity, a fresh start for her and Lily. On the con side, fear of the unknown, possible disappointment, the feeling of accepting charity. Lying in bed, Sarah stared at the ceiling, her mind still spinning with possibilities. She knew that whatever decision she made wouldn't just affect her, it would shape Lily's future as well. With that thought in mind, she finally fell asleep. Her last conscious reflections focused on Lily's smile, free from the shadows that had haunted her young life in recent months. The soft sound of Lily's breathing from the next room was a constant reminder of what was at stake. Sarah knew that, whatever decision she made, she would do it with her daughter's best interests at heart. With that resolve, she let sleep claim her, knowing that dawn would bring a new day full of possibilities, and perhaps the start of a new life for both of them. The next morning, Sarah awoke to the gentle ping of a notification on her phone. Still groggy, she fumbled on the nightstand for the device, blinking at the bright screen. It was an email from David Thornton. Heart pounding, Sarah opened the message. David had kept his promise, sending detailed information about the secretary position at his company. The email was long and thorough, describing job responsibilities, the benefits offered, and even an outline of the training she would receive. Sarah read and reread the email, absorbing every word. The proposed salary was significantly higher than what she earned at the restaurant, and the benefits included comprehensive health insurance for her and Lily. There was also mention of a professional development program, something Sarah had never before considered possible for herself. As she prepared breakfast for Lily, Sarah couldn't stop thinking about the offer. It was an opportunity that could change their lives, but fear of the unknown still loomed. "Mommy, you look worried," Lily observed, chewing her cereal. "Is it about the nice man from the restaurant?" Sarah gave a faint smile. "Yes, sweetheart. He offered me a new job, but it's a really big decision." Lily's eyes lit up. "You're going to say yes, right? He was so nice." Lily's excitement touched Sarah. Her daughter, so young yet so perceptive, seemed to see hope that Sarah struggled to acknowledge. Later that day at the restaurant, Sarah took a quiet moment to talk to Jessica. The two hid away in the supply room, out of earshot of other employees. "Jess, you won't believe what happened," Sarah began, her voice a mix of excitement and apprehension. Jessica listened attentively as Sarah narrated the events of the previous day and David's job offer. Her eyes widened with each new detail. "Sarah, that's amazing," Jessica exclaimed when Sarah finished. "It's like fate or something." Sarah bit her lip, hesitant. "I know, but what if it's too good to be true? What if I'm not capable of doing the job?" Jessica placed her hands on Sarah's shoulders, looking her directly in the eye. "Sarah, listen. You are one of the most dedicated, hard-working people I know. If this guy saw potential in you after just one conversation, Imagine what you can accomplish with the right opportunity. Lily's so excited about the idea, Sarah admitted. She can't wait for me to accept the job. Jessica smiled. See, even your daughter knows it's a good opportunity. Sometimes we need to trust a child's wisdom. Talking with Jessica left Sarah feeling a bit more confident, but she still had one practical concern gnawing at her. Who would watch Lily while she worked? As if the universe were conspiring to solve her problems, Sarah received a call from Mike that night. Her heart clenched at the sight of his name on the screen, but she answered, knowing that, painful as it was, they still needed to communicate about Lily. "Sarah," Mike's hesitant voice sounded on the other end. "I hope I'm not bothering you." "It's fine, Mike. What is it?" Sarah replied, trying to keep her voice neutral. I wanted to let you know I hired a babysitter for Lily," Mike said. "Her name is Emily. She has great references and plenty of experience with kids." Sarah was momentarily speechless. Of all the things she expected to hear from Mike, this wasn't one of them. "A babysitter," she finally managed. "Micah, I don't know what to say." "Look, I know things between us are complicated," Mike continued, guilt evident in his voice. "But Lily is our daughter, and I want to do my part to help. I thought a babysitter might take some pressure off you." Sarah felt a wave of conflicting emotions. On the one hand, she was grateful for the unexpected help. On the other, part of her wanted to reject anything from Mike. However, thinking of Lily and the possibility of a new job, she swallowed her pride. "Thank you, Mike," she said softly. That really helps." After hanging up, Sarah sat on the edge of her bed, her mind spinning. David's job offer, Jessica's support, and now Mike's unexpected help with a babysitter. It felt like the universe was pushing her toward this new opportunity. With a deep breath, Sarah picked up her phone and dialed the number on David's card. After a few rings, his voice answered. "Mr. Thornton, this is Sarah from the restaurant. I'd like to accept your offer for an interview if it still stands." David's voice sounded genuinely happy. "Sarah, it's great to hear from you. Of course the offer still stands. How about coming to the company tomorrow for an informal visit? We can talk more about the position, and you can see the environment." Sarah agreed, and with trembling hands, ended the call. She had taken the first step toward a new life, and there was no turning back now. The next morning, Sarah found herself standing in front of the imposing Thornton Innovations building. The modern glass and steel structure rose majestically against the blue sky, reflecting the sunlight like a beacon of possibilities. Sarah nervously adjusted the collar of her blouse, the best she owned, but clearly out of place in this corporate setting. Taking a deep breath, she entered the lobby. The interior of the building was as impressive as the exterior. The marble floor gleamed, reflecting the soft lights hanging from the high ceiling. Well-dressed employees hurried by, each seeming to have an important purpose. Sarah approached the reception desk, feeling small and out of place. "Hi, I'm Sarah. I have a meeting with Mr. Thornton." The receptionist smiled kindly. "Ah, yes, Mr. Thornton is expecting you. Please wear this visitor's badge and take the elevator to the 30th floor." The elevator rose smoothly, and Sarah's stomach churned, not just from the height, but from her anxiety about what lay ahead. The doors opened on the 30th floor, revealing a spacious, modern environment. David was there to greet her, his warm smile at odds with the corporate setting around him. "Sarah, welcome. I'm so glad you came. Come on, let me show you around the office." As David guided her around the floor, Sarah took in every detail. Modern workstations, glass-walled meeting rooms, a cafeteria that looked straight out of a design magazine. Everything was so different from the simple restaurant she was used to. "And here," David said, stopping in front of a desk near a large office door, "is where you'd work as my personal assistant." Sarah looked at the desk, equipped with a state-of-the-art computer and offering a stunning view of the city. It was intimidating and thrilling at the same time. Sensing Sarah's apprehension, David reassured her. "I know it can feel overwhelming at first, but I promise you'll get all the training and support you need. We have an excellent onboarding program, and I'll be personally involved in your training." Sarah nodded, grateful for the reassurance. "That's very kind of you, Mr. Thornton. I admit I'm a bit nervous, but also excited about the opportunity." David smiled. "Please, call me David. And it's perfectly normal to be nervous. But I saw something special in you, Sarah. I'm sure you'll do very well here." After the tour and a long conversation about job responsibilities, Sarah found herself uttering the words that would change her life. "I accept the job, David. Thank you for this incredible opportunity." David's smile lit up his entire face. "Wonderful. Welcome to the team, Sarah. I can't wait to see what you'll accomplish here." In the days that followed, Sarah found herself in a whirlwind of preparations. She gave her notice at the restaurant, updated her wardrobe with a few more appropriate corporate pieces, with Jessica's enthusiastic help, and mentally prepared for the big change ahead. The night before her first day at work, Sarah could barely sleep. She checked and rechecked her alarm, carefully laid out her outfit, and mentally rehearsed what she would say to her new co-workers. Lily, sensing her mother's excitement, came into her room late at night. "Mommy? Are you awake?" Sarah turned over in bed, smiling at her daughter. "Yes, Kwam, sweetie. I'm a little nervous about my new job tomorrow." Lily climbed into bed, snuggling into Sarah's arms. "Don't be nervous, Mommy. You'll be amazing. The nice man said you're special, remember?" Sarah hugged Lily tight, feeling a wave of love and gratitude for her wise beyond her years daughter. "Thank you, my love. You always know just what to say to make me feel better." With Lily by her side, Sarah finally drifted off to sleep, dreaming of the possibilities the new day would bring. Morning came far too quickly. Sarah woke before the alarm could ring, her body buzzing with nerves and anticipation. She dressed carefully, checking every detail in the mirror. Lily was already awake, excited to meet Emily, the new babysitter. When the doorbell rang, announcing Emily's arrival, Sarah felt both relief and apprehension. Emily was a young woman with a warm smile and kind eyes. "Good morning, Ms. Johnson. And you must be Lily. I'm so excited to spend the day with you." Sarah watched as Lily and Emily quickly formed a bond, chatting enthusiastically about the day's plans. Seeing her daughter so at ease relieved some of Sarah's anxiety. "Emily, thank you so much for doing this," Sarah said, picking up her purse. "If anything comes up, my number is on the fridge." Emily nodded confidently. "Don't worry, Mrs. Johnson. Lily and I are going to have a great time. Good luck on your first day." With one last hug for Lily and a wave to Emily, Sarah left, her heart pounding with anticipation for what lay ahead. Arriving at Thornton Innovations, Sarah was greeted by an HR representative who guided her through the onboarding process. Forms were filled out, policies explained, and a new employee badge was issued to her. "Sarah!" The familiar sound of David's voice greeted her when she finally reached the 30th floor. "Welcome to your first day. Ready to get started?" Sarah nodded, trying to appear more confident than she felt. "Yes, I'm eager to learn." David led her to her new desk, explaining the systems and software she would use. "Don't worry if it feels like a lot at first. You'll receive proper training for each aspect of the job." The next few hours were a blur of new information. Sarah learned how to navigate the company's email system, use the scheduling software, and was introduced to a series of protocols and procedures. Her co-workers reacted in mixed ways to her arrival. Some were welcoming, offering smiles and words of encouragement. Others were more reserved, eyeing her with curiosity or even a bit of skepticism. Sarah overheard occasional whispers about how she'd landed the job, with some speculating about her lack of corporate experience, but she forced herself to ignore the comments, focusing on absorbing as much as she could. David kept a professional distance throughout the day, but his presence was reassuring. He occasionally passed by Sarah's desk, checking her progress and offering words of encouragement. By the end of the day, Sarah was exhausted but satisfied. She had survived her first day in the corporate world, and although there was much to learn, she felt she had made a good start. Arriving home, Sarah found Lily and Emily sitting at the kitchen table, laughing as they colored in an activity book. "Mommy!" Lily exclaimed, running to hug Sarah. "How was your first day? Did you meet nice people? Do you have a big desk?" Sarah laughed, hugging her daughter back. "It was quite a day, sweetheart. I have a lot to learn, but I think it's going to be good for us." Emily smiled, packing up her things. "Lily was wonderful today. We did drawings, read stories, and even did a little science project." Sarah felt a surge of relief and gratitude. "Thank you, Emily. I'm so glad Lily had fun." After Emily left, Sarah and Lily had dinner together. As they ate, Sarah reflected on the drastic changes that had occurred in their lives in such a short time. "You know, Lily," Sarah said softly, "I think things are starting to get better for us." Lily beamed, her eyes shining. "I knew they would, Mommy. The nice man from the restaurant helped us, just like I asked in the note." Sarah felt a lump in her throat, recalling the innocent note that had set this whole journey in motion. "Yes, sweetheart. Sometimes help comes from unexpected places." After dinner, while putting Lily to bed, Sarah couldn't help but feel a wave of optimism. The day had been challenging but also exciting. She had much to learn, but for the first time in a long while, she felt she was on the right path. Later, lying in her own bed, Sarah mentally reviewed the day's events. The new work environment, her colleagues, her responsibilities. It was all so different from what she was used to. Yet instead of fear, she felt a growing excitement. Sarah picked up her phone and opened the photo gallery. There was the selfie she and Lily had taken that morning, just before she left for work. The bright smiles on their faces told a story of hope and new beginnings. Smiling, Sarah set the phone back on the nightstand. Tomorrow would be another day full of challenges and lessons, but she was ready to face them. As she closed her eyes, letting sleep envelop her, Sarah felt a peace she hadn't experienced in a long time. The future, once so uncertain and frightening, now shone with possibilities. Sarah knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but with Lily by her side and this new opportunity, she felt prepared to overcome any obstacle. And so, with thoughts of a brighter tomorrow, Sarah drifted off to sleep, ending not just her first day in her new life, but the first chapter of a journey that promised to bring change, challenges, and above all, hope for her and her daughter. The weeks turned into months, and a new routine began to form in Sarah and Lily's lives. The most notable change was the constant presence of Emily, the babysitter, who quickly became an essential part of their daily life. Lily, initially shy about this new presence, soon developed a close bond with Emily. Mornings, once marked by anxiety and rush, were now filled with laughter and lively discussions about the day's plans. "Emily, can we do that science experiment today?" Lily asked excitedly while Sarah prepared for work. Emily smiled, her eyes shining with genuine affection for the girl. "Of course, Lily, I have everything ready. It's going to be a lot of fun." Sarah watched these interactions with a mix of relief and a twinge of something like jealousy. It was comforting to see Lily so happy and well cared for, but sometimes Sarah couldn't help feeling she was missing out on precious moments in her daughter's life. However, those concerns were quickly dispelled when she came home, and Lily ran into her arms, eager to share the day's adventures. Emily always made a point of including Sarah, showing pictures and videos of Lily's activities, and encouraging the girl to tell her mother about all she'd learned. Meanwhile, at work, Sarah was thriving in ways she never imagined possible. The corporate environment that once felt so intimidating had become a place where she felt increasingly comfortable. Her organizational skills, honed by years of managing a household with limited resources, proved incredibly valuable in the corporate world. Sarah quickly became known for her efficiency and attention to detail. David, ever observant, noticed Sarah's progress with approval. One day, after a particularly successful meeting that Sarah had organized, he called her into his office. "Sarah, I want you to know I'm really impressed with your performance," David said, his tone warm yet professional. "You've exceeded all my expectations." Sarah felt her cheeks burn with his praise. "Thank you, David. That means a lot to me. I'm really grateful for the opportunity you gave me." There was a brief pause, a moment of silence charged with something neither of them was ready to name. David cleared his throat, breaking the moment. "How's Lily doing? Is the babysitter working out well?" Sarah's face lit up at the mention of her daughter. "Oh, Lily loves Emily. It was such a wonderful idea. Actually, I wanted to thank you again for suggesting that to Mike." David smiled, genuinely pleased to hear it. "I'm glad it worked out. Sometimes a little help can make all the difference." As Sarah left David's office, she couldn't help noticing how her heart beat a little faster in his presence. She pushed the thought aside, attributing it to the thrill of professional praise. At home, Lily was also thriving under the attention shared by Sarah, Emily, and, surprisingly, Mike. Contrary to Sarah's initial expectations, Mike showed renewed interest in spending time with Lily. At first, Sarah was skeptical of Mike's intentions, but seeing Lily's face light up when her father arrived to take her to the park or the movies, she couldn't deny the positive effect on her daughter. "Mommy, look what Daddy gave me," Lily exclaimed one day, showing off a new storybook. "He said we can read it together next weekend." Sarah smiled, swallowing the lump in her throat. "That's wonderful, honey. I'm sure you'll have a great time." As the days passed, Sarah found herself adjusting to this new balance in her life, challenging work by day, cozy nights with Lily, and alternating weekends when Mike took Lily out. It was different from what she'd known before, but it felt right. One day, while Sarah was organizing some documents at her desk, David approached, looking slightly nervous. "Sarah, I was thinking," he began, his voice a bit hesitant. "We're planning a special company day next month, a picnic for employees and their families. I'd really like for you and Lily to come." Sarah felt a wave of warmth rise up her neck. "Oh, that would be lovely, David. I'm sure Lily would love it." David smiled, looking relieved. "Great. It'll be a wonderful opportunity for everyone to get to know each other outside the work environment." When the day of the picnic arrived, Sarah was surprised at how nervous she felt. She carefully chose her and Lily's outfits, wanting to make a good impression without appearing too eager. The park was beautifully decorated for the event, with colorful booths, games for children, and a central picnic area. Lily, enchanted by everything, soon joined a group of other kids in a treasure hunt the company had organized. Sarah watched her daughter from a distance, smiling at how confidently she interacted with the other children. That's when she felt a presence by her side. "She looks like she's having fun," David commented, his shoulder briefly brushing against Sarah's. A slight shiver ran down Sarah's spine at the contact. "Yes, she's loving it. Thank you for inviting us, David." "It means a lot." David turned to face her, his eyes gentle. "Sarah, But before he could finish, Lily ran up, eager to show off the prize she'd won in the treasure hunt. The moment passed, but Sarah sensed something had changed between them. As the day went on, Sarah found herself seeking David in the crowd, her heart skipping a beat each time their eyes met. She tried to convince herself it was just gratitude she was feeling, but a part of her knew it was more. Driving home that night, Lily asleep in the back seat, exhausted but happy, Sarah reflected on how her life had changed in recent months. From an uncertain, frightening future, she now had a stable job, a happy daughter, and the possibility of something more on the horizon. Sarah shook her head, trying to dispel those thoughts. Now wasn't the time for romantic complications. She needed to focus on Lily and her work. Still, she couldn't help the small smile that appeared when she thought of David. The following weeks brought a series of subtle yet significant changes. At work, Sarah noticed David starting to entrust her with increasingly important tasks. What started with organizing small meetings soon evolved into more substantial projects. "Sarah, I'd like you to lead the investor presentation next week," David announced one day, catching her by surprise. Sarah felt both excitement and nerves. "Me? Are you sure, David? That's a big responsibility. David smiled, confidence shining in his eyes. I'm absolutely sure. You're more than ready for it. David's faith in her abilities made Sarah feel 10 feet tall. She threw herself into the project with determination, spending extra hours preparing and rehearsing her presentation. On the day of the presentation, Sarah was nervous but prepared. When she finished, there was a moment of silence before the room erupted in applause. The investors were clearly impressed, and David looked radiant with pride. You were amazing, Sarah, David whispered as they left the conference room. I knew you could do it. The warmth in his gaze made Sarah's heart skip a beat. She murmured a thank you, feeling her cheeks flush. At home, Lily was also making remarkable progress. Emily, always attentive and loving, provided regular updates to both Sarah and Mike about Lily's development. Lily is really excelling in math, Emily mentioned one day, and her vocabulary is expanding quickly. She's an incredibly smart and curious child. Sarah couldn't help feeling a surge of pride. Thank you for taking such good care of her, Emily. I don't know what we'd do without you. Mike, in turn, seemed more committed than ever to his role as a father. He not only kept his regular visits, but also started taking a greater interest in Lily's education. I bought some educational books for us to read together, Mike mentioned during a phone call with Sarah. I thought we could take turns. One night you read with her, the next night I do. What do you think? Sarah was momentarily at a loss for words, surprised by Mike's initiative. That would be great, Mike. I'm sure Lily will love it. As the months passed, Sarah and Mike found a surprisingly harmonious rhythm of co-parenting. Lily's transitions between them, once tense and uncomfortable, were now smoother. They even started attending parent-teacher conferences together, presenting a united front for Lily's sake. One day, after one such conference, Mike turned to Sarah with a hesitant smile. You know, I think we're doing pretty well at this co-parenting thing. Sarah nodded, feeling a mix of emotions. Yes, I think so. Lily seems happier and more balanced. Mike paused, appearing as though he wanted to say something else. Finally, he spoke. Sarah, I know I caused you and Lily a lot of pain. I can never fully undo that, but I want you to know I'm truly trying to be a better father now. Sarah felt tears sting her eyes. I know, Mike, and I appreciate that. Lily deserves to have both of us in her life, working together for her. Meanwhile, at the office, plans for a major corporate event were in full swing. David announced a special day for the company that would include not just employees, but their families as well. It will be a celebration of everything we've achieved this year, David explained during a team meeting, and a chance to thank our families for their support. Sarah couldn't help noticing how David's eyes lingered on her a moment longer than necessary as he spoke. She felt herself blush, quickly looking away. In the days leading up to the event, Sarah worked tirelessly on the preparations, wanting everything to be perfect. David frequently stopped by her desk, offering help or simply checking her progress. Don't forget to breathe, Sarah, he joked one day, noting her tense expression. You're doing an incredible job. I'm sure it's going to be a memorable event. On the day of the event, the office was transformed. Colorful decorations adorned the walls, buffet tables were set up with an impressive array of food, and an area for children's games and activities had been created on one of the floors. Sarah arrived early with Lily, both dressed smartly for the occasion. Lily, enchanted by the decorations and the promise of meeting her mum's co-workers, could hardly contain her excitement. Mommy, look at all the people, Lily exclaimed, her eyes wide with wonder. Sarah smiled, gently squeezing her daughter's hand. Yes, sweetheart. These are all my co-workers and their families. As Sarah did a final check to ensure everything was in order, she felt a hand on her shoulder. Turning, she found herself face to face with David. Sarah, you really outdid yourself, he said, his gaze sweeping over the space before returning to her. This is all amazing. Sarah felt her heart quicken at the compliment. Thank you, David. I wanted it to be special. And it is, he answered softly. For a moment they stood there, looking at each other, the buzz of the party fading into the background. The moment was broken by Lily, who ran over to them. "Mommy, can I go play with the other kids?" Sarah blinked, returning to reality. "Of course, honey. Just stay where I can see you, okay?" As Lily ran off, David turned to Sarah with a warm smile. "She's a wonderful child, Sarah. You've done an amazing job raising her." Sarah felt a lump form in her throat at his sincere praise. "Thank you, David. That means a lot to me." As the party continued, Sarah found herself balancing her duties as organizer with her role as mother. She alternated between checking that the event ran smoothly and making sure Lily, who seemed to be having a blast, was okay. In a quiet moment, Sarah slipped into a secluded corner, observing the celebration in full swing. Just then, David appeared beside her, 2 glasses of champagne in his hands. "I thought you could use a drink," he said, offering her one. "You deserve to celebrate this event's success." Sarah accepted the glass with a grateful smile. "Thank you, David, not just for the drink, but for everything. This opportunity has changed our lives in ways I never imagined." David looked at her intently, his eyes reflecting something deeper than mere professional appreciation. "Sarah, he began, but was interrupted by the sound of breaking glass followed by a child's cry. Sarah immediately recognized Lily's voice. "I'm sorry, David, I need to..." "Go," he said with an understanding nod. "We'll talk later." Sarah rushed off to find Lily, who had tripped and knocked over a vase. The girl was in tears, more scared than hurt. Sarah calmed her, cleaned her minor scrapes, and comforted her until she was smiling again. As she took care of Lily, Sarah couldn't help but think about the interrupted moment with David. There had been something in his expression and tone that made her heart race. She wondered what he had been about to say. The rest of the party passed without further incidents. Sarah moved among the guests, ensuring everyone was enjoying themselves. But her thoughts kept returning to David. They exchanged glances across the room several times, each loaded with an unspoken energy. When the event finally wound down and the last guests left, Sarah once again found herself alone with David, both exhausted but pleased with the day's success. "It was an incredible day, Sarah," David said, his tone soft and intimate in the now quiet office. Sarah nodded, suddenly feeling nervous. "It really was. Thank you again for the opportunity, David. Not just this event, but everything." David took a step toward her, closing the distance between them. "Sarah, Once again they were interrupted, this time by Lily, yawning loudly. Clearly exhausted after the day's excitement, Sarah smiled apologetically. "I think it's time for us to head home." David nodded, a mix of disappointment and understanding on his face. "Of course. Get some rest. You both deserve it." As Sarah guided a sleepy Lily out of the office, she couldn't help taking one last look back. David stood where they had left him, his eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made her heart flutter. On the drive home, Lily dozed in the back seat, and Sarah reflected on the day and the last few months. Her life had changed dramatically, largely thanks to David. He'd given her a chance when she needed it most, believed in her when few would. But now, Sarah realized her feelings for David had grown beyond gratitude. There was an undeniable attraction, a connection that went beyond the professional. And if she wasn't mistaken, David seemed to feel the same. Arriving home, Sarah tucked Lily into bed and sat at her daughter's side, watching her sleep peacefully. She thought about how stable their lives had become, how Lily was flourishing with the new routine and the shared attention of herself, Mike, and Emily. Sarah knew she should be content with the balance they'd achieved. Her career was taking off, Lily was happy and healthy, and even her relationship with Mike had improved. But as she got ready for bed, Sarah couldn't ignore the flutter in her stomach when she thought of David. She recognized that her feelings for him were growing, becoming something she could no longer dismiss. "What am I doing?" she whispered to herself in the darkness of her room. Yet even as she questioned the wisdom of her emotions, she couldn't help but smile at the memory of David's gaze and the way he said her name. With a sigh, Sarah closed her eyes, knowing tomorrow would bring new challenges and maybe new possibilities. Her life had found a new equilibrium, but she sensed she stood on the brink of another change, and for the first time in a long while, the prospect of change didn't scare her. On the contrary, she felt excited by the possibilities the future might hold. It was a quiet Saturday afternoon. Sarah was in the kitchen, preparing dinner while Lily drew at the table, chatting cheerfully about her day at school. The doorbell rang, cutting through the peaceful atmosphere and causing Sarah to frown in confusion. She wasn't expecting anyone. "Stay here, sweetheart," Sarah said to Lily, drying her hands on a dish towel before heading to the door. When Sarah opened it, her heart stopped. Standing on her porch was Mike. He looked thinner than she remembered, with dark circles under his eyes and an anxious expression on his face. "Sarah," he said, his voice trembling. "Can I come in? We need to talk." Sarah felt a wave of conflicting emotions, shock, anger, fear, all battling for dominance. She crossed her arms defensively. "What are you doing here, Mike?" Mike took a hesitant step forward. "Please, Sarah, I made a terrible mistake. I realized how much I—" "No," Sarah interrupted him sharply, her voice shaking with anger. "You don't have the right to show up like this unannounced. Not after what you did." "Mommy," Lily's voice came from behind Sarah, making her freeze. "Who is it?" Before Sarah could answer, Lily appeared at her side, her eyes widening at the sight of Mike. "Daddy?" Mike offered a weak smile. "Hi, Princess. You've gotten so big." Lily looked from Mike to Sarah, confusion evident on her face. "Mommy, why is Daddy here?" Sarah felt panic rise in her throat. This was not a situation she had prepared for. "Lily, sweetheart, why don't you go to your room for a minute? Mommy needs to talk to your dad." At that moment, Emily appeared in the hallway, having heard the commotion from the room where she was tidying up. She quickly assessed the situation, her eyes narrowing at the sight of Mike. "Come on, Lily," Emily said softly, extending her hand to the girl. "How about we go play for a bit while your mum talks?" Lily hesitated, still staring at Mike. "But it'll be okay, sweetheart," Sarah assured her, forcing a smile. "Go with Emily, please." Reluctantly, Lily took Emily's hand and left the room, casting confused glances over her shoulder as she went. Once Lily was out of sight, Sarah turned to Mike, her eyes blazing with anger. "How dare you show up like this, after everything you've done?" Mike raised his hands in a placating gesture. "Sarah, please, I know I made a terrible mistake. I was an idiot, a coward. But I realized how much I love you both. I want to make things right." Sarah let out a bitter laugh. "Make things right? Now? After months? Do you have any idea what we went through because of you?" I know, Mike said, his voice heavy with regret. "I don't expect you to forgive me right away. But please, just give me a chance to explain, to show that I've changed." Sarah felt hot tears of anger prick her eyes. "Change? Mike, you abandoned us. You chose another woman over your family. How do you expect me to believe anything you say now?" Mike took another step forward, crossing the threshold of the house. "Sarah, I ended things with her. I realized it was the biggest mistake of my life. You two are my family, my home." "No," Sarah said, her voice cold and firm. "We were your family. You gave up that right when you walked out that door." At that moment, Sarah's phone vibrated in her pocket. She pulled it out, seeing David's name on the screen. Without thinking twice, she answered. "David?" Her voice quivered slightly. "Sarah, are you okay? You sound upset." David's worried voice came through the line. Sarah threw a furious glance at Mike before replying, "Actually, no. Mike is here. He showed up out of nowhere and—" "Do you want me to come over?" David asked immediately. Sarah hesitated a moment before replying. No, I think I can handle this, but thank you. Hanging up, she turned her attention back to Mike, who was watching her with a mix of confusion and jealousy. Who's David? That's none of your business, Sarah replied icily. Mike, I need you to leave. Now. Mike shook his head, his expression hardening. No, Sarah. I'm not leaving until we talk this through. I have rights, you know. Lily is my daughter, too. Sarah felt a wave of panic. Don't you dare use Lily as an excuse. You abandoned her just as much as you abandoned me. I made a mistake, Mike shouted, his frustration finally boiling over. Don't people deserve a second chance? A sound of childlike crying reached Sarah's ears, making her heart clench. Lily must have heard the shouting. Get out of my house, Sarah said, her voice trembling with barely contained anger. You're not welcome here, Mike. If you want to see Lily, we'll do it through our lawyers. Mike seemed to deflate at her words. Sarah, please. Leave, Sarah shouted, pointing to the door. Now! Defeated, Mike backed toward the door. This isn't over, Sarah. I love you both. I'll prove I've changed. As soon as Mike was gone, Sarah slammed the door shut and locked it, leaning against it as tears finally fell. She could hear Lily crying upstairs and knew she needed to be strong for her daughter, but for that moment, she allowed herself a brief lapse of weakness. Taking a deep breath, Sarah wiped away the tears and headed upstairs to comfort Lily. She found Emily holding the girl, whispering soft words of reassurance. Mommy, Lily sobbed upon seeing Sarah, reaching out her arms to her. Sarah scooped Lily into her arms, hugging her tightly. It's okay, my love. Mommy's here. Emily gave Sarah a concerned look. Did he leave? Sarah nodded, grateful for Emily's calm, reassuring presence. Yes, he's gone. Thank you for taking care of Lily. The hours that followed were a blur of emotions. Sarah tried to explain the situation to Lily as best she could, but how do you explain something so complex to a child? Lily oscillated between confusion, sadness, and anger, asking questions Sarah struggled to answer. That night, after Lily finally fell asleep, Sarah sat in the kitchen, a cup of tea untouched in front of her. Her phone vibrated with a text from David. I'm here if you need to talk, anytime. Sarah managed a small smile, grateful for his support. She considered calling him, but decided she needed to process everything alone first. The following days were difficult. Lily started having nightmares, often waking in the middle of the night calling for her father. Sarah did her best to console her, but felt powerless against her daughter's pain. Emily proved invaluable during this period. Not only did she care for Lily with extra patience and understanding, but she also helped the girl navigate her confusing feelings. It's okay to feel sad or angry, Lily, Sarah overheard Emily saying one day. Your feelings are important and valid. At work, Sarah struggled to maintain her composure. David, noticing her distress, did what he could to lighten her workload without drawing her co-workers' attention. Sarah, he said gently one day, calling her into his office, I know you're going through a rough time. If you need some time off or anything at all, just let me know. Tears sprang to Sarah's eyes at David's kindness. Thank you, she whispered. It means so much to me. Meanwhile, Mike kept trying to make contact. He called multiple times a day, left voicemails pleading for a chance to talk. Unable to handle the added pressure, Sarah decided to block his number. One night, after tucking Lily into bed, Sarah called Jessica. She needed to vent to someone who'd known her for years, someone who would fully understand the complexity of her emotions. Jess, Sarah said as soon as her friend answered, her voice cracking. Mike came back. What? Jessica exclaimed. That jerk had the nerve to show up after all this time. Sarah poured out everything, the surprise visit, her reaction, Lily's confusion. Jessica listened patiently, offering sympathy and outrage where appropriate. How can he think he can just stroll back in as if nothing happened? Sarah raged. years of hurt and betrayal spilling over. After all the pain he caused Lily and me. You have every right to be angry, Sarah, Jessica assured her. What he did was unforgivable. You don't owe him anything. Talking to Jessica helped Sarah release some of her frustration, but also left her feeling uneasy. What if Mike tried something more drastic? The next day, Sarah decided to share her concerns with David. He listened intently, his face growing more serious with each word. Sarah, he said at last, I think you should consider taking legal measures. Maybe get a restraining order, just to be sure he can't show up unannounced or upset Lily at school. Sarah hesitated. Do you really think that's necessary? David nodded solemnly. Better safe than sorry. I know an excellent family lawyer who can help. I can put you in touch with him if you'd like. Sarah agreed, grateful once more for David's unwavering support. She didn't know how she would handle this turbulent time without him, but the worst was yet to come. A few days later, Sarah received a letter from a law firm. With trembling hands, she opened the envelope, her heart sinking as she read the contents. Mike was threatening to fight for Lily's custody. Sarah felt the world spin around her. The possibility of losing Lily was more than she could bear. With tears in her eyes, she picked up the phone and dialed David's number. David, she said as soon as he answered, her voice shaking. I need help. Mike, he's threatening to fight for custody of Lily. David's voice was firm and reassuring. Don't worry, Sarah. We'll face this together. I promise I'll do everything I can to help you and Lily. Hanging up, Sarah looked at the photo of Lily on the side table. Her daughter smiled back at her, innocent and happy. A fierce determination rose within Sarah. No matter what Mike tried, she would fight with all she had to protect her daughter and the life they'd built together. The path ahead would be hard, but with the support of David, Emily, Jessica, and everyone who cared for her and Lily, Sarah knew she would find the strength to face any challenge. The battle was just beginning, but she was ready. Sarah stared at the document in her hands. The threat of Mike fighting for Lily's custody, weighing on her heart like lead. She knew the battle ahead would be grueling, but she was determined to protect her daughter at all costs. True to his word, David wasted no time taking action. He immediately contacted the best family law specialists, determined to provide Sarah with the strongest legal support possible. Don't worry about the costs, Sarah, David insisted when she expressed concern about legal expenses. Think of it as an investment in Lily's future. Sarah's gratitude toward David grew by the day, but she couldn't help feeling a pang of guilt. Was she right to accept so much help from him? As the adults prepared for the legal battle, Lily found herself caught in the middle of the conflict. The once bright and cheerful girl began to show clear signs of stress. She had trouble sleeping, often waking up in the middle of the night from nightmares. At school, her teachers noticed she was quieter and more withdrawn. Emily, the babysitter, became even more indispensable during this period. She not only cared for Lily while Sarah worked and dealt with legal matters, but also provided emotional support for the little girl. Lily, honey, do you want to talk about how you're feeling? Emily would ask gently, often finding Lily curled up in a corner, clutching her favorite teddy bear. With patience and kindness, Emily helped Lily express her tangled emotions, assuring her it was normal and acceptable to feel sad, scared, or even angry. As the legal case progressed, Mike showed he was willing to fight dirty. He tried to use Sarah's close relationship with David against her, implying something inappropriate was going on. Your Honor, Mike's lawyer argued in one of the preliminary hearings, we have reason to believe Miss Johnson is involved in a relationship with her employer, Mr. Thornton. This raises questions about her ability to provide a stable environment for the child. Sarah felt her face burn with anger and shame. She looked at David, sitting in the gallery, who looked equally outraged. Sarah's attorney, a middle-aged woman with keen eyes and a determined expression, quickly rose. Objection, Your Honor. These allegations are unfounded and irrelevant to the case at hand. Ms. Johnson has provided a stable, loving home for her daughter. as evidenced by the social worker's reports. The judge agreed, but the damage was done. Sarah knew Mike was willing to use any tactic to try to gain custody of Lily. Finally, the day of the final hearing arrived. Sarah's stomach churned with nerves as she entered the courtroom. She saw Mike across the aisle, looking confident and well-dressed. For a moment, she felt a stab of doubt. What if the judge believed him? But then she thought of Lily and all the progress they had made in recent months, and her resolve hardened. When it was her turn to testify, Sarah took a deep breath and approached the witness stand. With a clear and steady voice, she began telling her story. "When Mike left us, I thought my world had ended," Sarah began, her voice shaking slightly. "He didn't just leave me. He left our daughter, a 4-year-old child who didn't understand why her father had suddenly disappeared." Sarah continued, describing the months of struggle, the nights she cried quietly so Lily wouldn't hear, the days she could barely get out of bed but did so because her daughter needed her. "I had to be both mother and father to Lily," Sarah said, tears now streaming freely down her face. "I had to explain to her why Daddy wasn't there anymore, why he didn't call, why he chose another family instead of ours." The courtroom was silent, all eyes fixed on Sarah as she laid bare the pain and abandonment she had endured. "But we survived," Sarah went on, her voice gaining strength. "More than that, we thrived. Lily is happy, healthy, and well-adjusted. She has a stable routine, friends at school, and all the love and support she needs. I built a new life for us, a good, safe life." When Sarah finished her testimony, she felt exhausted but also strangely unburdened, as if a great weight had been lifted from her shoulders. David was next to testify. He spoke calmly and clearly about Sarah's exemplary performance at work, her dedication to Lily, and the evident well-being of the child whenever she visited the office. "Lily is a happy, well-cared-for child," David concluded. "It's obvious to anyone who sees her with Sarah that she's growing up in a loving, stable environment." After hours of testimony and arguments, the judge announced he would issue his verdict after a short recess. Sarah felt her heart race as she waited, hands nervously gripping the fabric of her skirt. When the judge returned, the courtroom fell into complete silence. Sarah held her breath, feeling as though the entire world had stopped. "After careful consideration of the evidence presented," the judge began, his grave voice echoing through the room, "this court grants full custody of Lily Johnson to her mother, Sarah Johnson." Sarah felt a wave of relief so intense it nearly knocked her off her feet. She only vaguely heard the judge continue, explaining that Mike would have the right to limited supervised visits and must keep a specified distance from Sarah and Lily outside those times. When the session ended, Sarah found herself enveloped in a tight hug from her lawyer. David was there in seconds, his face alight with joy. "You did it, Sarah," he said, his voice full of pride. "You won." In the days that followed, Sarah watched Lily carefully, trying to gauge how her daughter was coping with the outcome of the trial. There was a clear sense of relief in Lily, a lightness in her behavior that had been missing during the stress of the legal battle. However, Sarah also noticed moments of sadness in Lily, especially when she saw other children with their fathers. "Mommy," Lily asked one night, as Sarah tucked her into bed, "does Daddy still love me?" Sarah's heart clenched at the question. "Of course he does, sweetheart," she answered gently. "Your dad loves you very much. Things are complicated between adults sometimes, but that doesn't change how he feels about you." Realizing she needed professional help to deal with her own repressed emotions, Sarah began attending therapy sessions. It was a difficult process, digging up years of hurt and trauma, but she knew it was necessary for her own healing and to be the best mother she could for Lily. Inspired by Sarah's struggle and wanting to do more to help families in similar situations, David launched a charity project focusing on single-parent families. He invited Sarah to be an integral part of the initiative, valuing her personal experience and insights. "Your story can inspire and help so many others, Sarah," David said, his eyes shining with enthusiasm. "Together, we can make a difference in the lives of many families." Emily remained an invaluable pillar of support for the family. Her constant and caring presence helped maintain a sense of normalcy and stability for Lily, even in the most turbulent moments. As the days passed, Sarah and David grew closer. The bond forged during the legal battle seemed to solidify something between them, a deep connection based on trust, mutual respect, and increasingly obvious affection. One evening, as they worked late on the charity project, Sarah found herself watching David. She noticed how his eyes lit up when he talked about helping others, the kindness in his gesture when he placed a cup of coffee in front of her, the warmth of his smile when their eyes met. It was then Sarah realized she was ready to move on. The fear and hesitation that had held her back for so long seemed to have dissipated. She had faced her past, fought her battles, and now she was ready to embrace the future. A future she hoped would include David. With a soft smile, Sarah leaned a little closer to David, feeling the warmth of his presence. She knew the road ahead would still have its challenges, but for the first time in a long while, Sarah felt genuinely hopeful about what the future held for her and Lily. The months following the custody battle brought a new sense of peace and stability to Sarah and Lily. With David's constant support and Emily's reassuring presence, they finally began to feel they were turning the page to a new chapter in their lives. One evening, after a particularly pleasant dinner with David, Sarah found the courage to put her feelings into words. "David," she began, her heart pounding, "I wanted to thank you for everything you've done for us. But more than that, I think I'm falling in love with you." David's face lit up in a radiant smile. "Sarah, I feel the same. In fact, I think I've been in love with you for quite some time." With those words, Sarah and David officially began their relationship. It was a gentle, natural start, as though it were the logical progression of everything they had experienced together. Lily, now 6 years old, observant as always, noticed the change in dynamics between her mother and David. One day, while the three of them were having a picnic in the park, she addressed the subject with her characteristic frankness. "David, are you going to be my new dad?" she asked, her big eyes full of curiosity. David exchanged a quick look with Sarah before answering carefully. "Well, Lily, I love you and your mum very much. If you want me to, I'd love to be a father figure for you. But that doesn't mean I'm trying to replace your biological dad." Lily considered this for a moment before smiling. "I think I'd like that. You make Mommy smile." Lily's acceptance was a huge relief for Sarah and David. Seeing her daughter embrace this new family dynamic made Sarah feel they really could build a happy future together. David's charity project for single-parent families began to gain traction. Sarah became an integral part of the initiative, using her personal experience to help shape programs and policies. Lily also got involved, often helping at family-oriented events and becoming a sort of mascot for the project. It was at one of these events that Mike made his last attempt at reconciliation. He showed up unexpectedly, looking nervous but determined. "Sarah, I know I don't have the right to ask, but could we try again for Lily's sake?" he pleaded. Sarah felt a wave of conflicting emotions, but looking over at David, who was across the room playing with Lily, she knew her answer. "I'm sorry, Mike," she said firmly, "but we've moved on. Lily is happy and safe. It's best to keep things the way they are." Mike seemed to deflate at her words, but nodded in resigned understanding. Emily, who had become such a crucial part of their lives, decided to continue as Lily's babysitter even when Sarah's finances improved. "You guys are like family to me now," Emily explained with a warm smile. "I can't imagine not being part of Lily's life." A few months later, on a quiet evening, David surprised Sarah with a question that would change their lives forever. He had prepared a special dinner at home, with Lily and Emily's secret help. "Sarah," David began, taking her hands in his, "will you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" Tears filled Sarah's eyes as she looked from David to Lily, who was eagerly nodding. "Yes," she exclaimed. "Yes, of course I will." The wedding, held a few months later, was an intimate and emotional ceremony. Lily, radiant in her flower girl dress, had a special role, symbolically uniting Sarah and David's hands with a ribbon. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, there wasn't a dry eye in the small gathering. It was clear to everyone that this was more than just two people getting married. It was the official union of a family. 2 years later, Lily, now 8, was sitting at the kitchen table, focused on writing something on a piece of colorful paper. Sarah, 6 months pregnant with her first child with David, watched curiously. "What are you writing, sweetheart?" Sarah asked. Lily looked up, her eyes shining. "I'm writing a note to the baby like the one I wrote for David. I want the baby to know I love them already, even before they're born." Sarah felt tears well up in her eyes. "Oh, Lily," she whispered, hugging her daughter, "that's beautiful." David walked into the kitchen at that moment, smiling as he took in the scene. "What's going on here?" "Lily's writing a note to the baby," Sarah explained, her voice thick with emotion. David knelt beside Lily, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You know, Lily, that note you wrote for me years ago changed our lives in a wonderful way. I'm sure this new note will be just as special." Lily beamed, proud. "Do you think one day I can help other kids like me, kids who need a new beginning?" Sarah and David exchanged a moved glance. "I'm sure you can, sweetheart," Sarah replied. "In fact, how about we start thinking of ways you can get more involved in our charity project?" Lily's eyes lit up at the idea. "Yes, I could write notes for other kids, telling them everything will be okay." As Lily excitedly returned to her note, Sarah and David shared a quiet moment of gratitude. Their family had faced challenges but emerged stronger and closer. And now, with a new member on the way, they looked to the future with hope and love. Their story was a testament to the power of a simple act of courage, a note written by a child, and how it could spark a chain of events that would change lives forever. It was only the beginning of a journey promising even more love, growth, and the chance to make a difference in the world, one note at a time. As the family gathered around the table, the air was filled with love and hope. Lily, focused on her note for her future sibling, represented not just the link between past and future, but also the promise of a legacy of compassion and helping others. Sarah, one hand lovingly resting on her growing belly, watched her daughter with a mix of pride and gratitude. She thought about how a simple note from a child had set off a series of events that completely transformed their lives. David, standing next to Sarah, placed an arm around her shoulders, pulling her close. Their eyes met, sharing a look of profound love and mutual understanding. They had faced many challenges together, but each obstacle had only strengthened their bond. Emily, now an integral part of the family, walked into the kitchen with a plate of freshly baked cookies. The sweet aroma filled the air, adding a cozy note to the family scene. "Who wants cookies?" she asked with a warm smile. "Me!" Lily exclaimed, raising her hand excitedly, her note momentarily forgotten. As everyone gathered around the table, sharing laughter and cookies, it was clear this was a family bound not just by blood or marriage, but by choice, love, and extraordinary circumstances. The future, though always uncertain, now shone brightly with possibilities. Sarah knew that no matter what came, they would face it together, as a family. And perhaps, she thought, watching Lily and her half-written note, they would continue to change the world, one small act of kindness at a time. As night fell and the stars began to shine outside, the house was filled with a sense of peace and contentment. It was the end of one chapter, but the beginning of many others. For Sarah, David, Lily, and the baby on the way, it was the true start of their happily ever after,